What's going on, guys? You're Meshi 504 back here today with another episode of Paranormal Stories from Reddit. Let's get right into it. Our first story comes from the user Disastrous Rub 2208. It's titled, "Saw a couple of star-like things zigzag across the sky. I was outside admiring the sky and the stars when I saw some small reddish lights in the sky moving really fast. And at first, I was excited thinking they were satellites, but then they moved faster and suddenly stopped moving. Then seconds after that, they moved at an insane speed and started zigzagging left and right and all over the place. I always thought people who claim they saw UFOs were not okay in the head, but I'm now convinced. There's no other explanation for what it was. No man-made object can accelerate and stop at that speed, especially in the sky." And that's also an interesting story just for me because me and my friend actually saw something similar to that. With the only type of UFO experience I've ever experienced was one night looking into the skies when I lived in the country, and literally it looked like a red star and just did absolutely insane maneuvers. It was as high in the sky as stars are. It looked just like a star except with a red tint, and still can't explain it. Me and my friend saw it. There's definitely a lot more that goes on in this world that we don't see. Some things are a mystery. Jumping right into our next story for the night. It's called Mischievous Playmate by the user that is way too hard to pronounce, but they are awesome for letting me share this story. So let's get into it. It was already past midnight and my daughter and I were in our living room. She was only 2 years old back then. I was browsing my phone and she's playing with her iPad. She turned to me and said, "Mommy, the kid is bad." I thought it was just one of those videos she was watching, so I told her, "Tap it and tell them that's bad." She turned her back, tapped the air like somebody was on her side and said, "That's bad." Then she ran to me, crying, and was so scared. I remember how my whole body got goosebumps all over. The next day I was in our cousin's room. She suddenly heard a child murmuring. I never understood what it said, but it felt like the voice was just right next to me. Well, thanks so much for sharing. Let's jump right into our next story from the user Sherlock Lady, titled, "Did My Rage Cause a Vase to Explode?" I'm not so sure what happened. Yesterday, my boyfriend and I were having an argument over the phone. It was getting pretty heated, and I was getting madder and madder. I was sitting in my recliner, and just as I was about to lose it on him, I heard a large popping sound behind me. I thought it was a gunshot through my window. I turned around, and a medium-sized vase that held combs on my desk had literally exploded. I was so confused. I looked to see if something had fallen on it from the side, from above, from anywhere. There was nothing around it, nothing out of place. It looked as if it had fallen over facing my chair, but there was no reason for it to have fallen. It's a decent-sized vase and only had 2 or 3 pocket-sized combs in it. I'm actually terrified my anger caused it to break. I was so angry, and the pop sound came at the height of it. My mom and daughter actually yelled to ask if I was okay because they heard it from 2 separate parts of the house. I'm not a huge believer in the paranormal, but I absolutely cannot find a rational reason for what happened. What do y'all think? I think it could be a number of things. It could be a spirit, a coincidence, maybe telekinesis. Maybe somebody broke the vase the day before and then super glued it together, and it just happened to break apart at that time. Unless it happens again, we'll never truly know, but definitely a strange story, and awesome that you shared. Hope everything's going well and you stay safe. Our final story for this video is going to be from Caterpillar Puzzled 32, titled "Imaginary Friend." Now, this story is definitely an interesting one, to say the least. I loved it. I've heard similar stories just talking to people. So let's get right into it. As a kid, I had a lot of paranormal experiences. So today I want to share another one. Again, my first language is not English, so sorry for any grammar errors. My grandparents lived on a little hill next to a big forest. It was like a mini village up there, with only a few houses. We had a very big garden in which I would play all the time. One day a little boy showed up outside our garden fence. I was so excited to see him because I was the only 6 to 7-year-old kid in the neighborhood, and he looked like my age. So I went up to him and greeted him. He was very polite, and we agreed on playing together. After this day, we played every time I was at my grandparents' house pretty much. Either in our garden or in the front of the forest. He never wanted to go inside our house, which I was a little bummed about. I wanted to show him all of my toys we had been talking about, but oh well. We always had so much fun together outdoors, so I stopped asking him to come inside. After a few months, my grandmother was invited to a neighbor's house for some coffee and cake. I was in as soon as I heard the word cake. So we went over, and as I walked into the house, I saw a picture of my now friend that I've been playing with for months. So I said out loud, "Hey, that's the boy I've been playing with." Our neighbor looked at me dumbfounded and said, "Darling, that's not possible. That is my son that's passed away 20 years ago." We never really talked about him again. And because I was so young, I can't really remember when I stopped seeing him, but I know that we moved around that time, so that might have been when I stopped seeing him. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Be sure to take all your anger out on the like button and subscribe buttons. That would help me tremendously. Hope you guys have an awesome night. Peace.